So I'd like to thank Natascha for being here this morning, and I believe that before she and I kick off, there's somebody else that she would like to thank.
Yes, thank you so much, Sandra, and thank you, Bernard. I think it's probably appropriate for me to start by saying thank you to Stephen. I met Stephen Forrest the first time at Lonman, actually, a number of years ago, and I think as an industry we would have been poorer if we did not have your thought leadership, your provocative thinking, your inquisitive mind and curiosity about our industry. And I think us as an industry will always be in your debt. Just wanted to say thank you.
So thank you for that. And I think also thank you to the speakers this morning, because they did a lot of the heavy lift for us, you know. So they answered the questions about supply and demand and hydrogen and where we thought prices were going to go. And that frees up the time for us to talk about the bigger picture issues. And I think where we'd like to start off the conversation today is the role of mining in the world today, and the role of the PGM industry in the world today, because it is, after all, a PGMs industry day, and we'd love to hear your views on that topic, just to kick us off and take a big step back.
Thank you, and I think a very relevant question. Thanks, Sandra. I think it's interesting if we think about the perception of mining that is really negative in the world out there. Recently, we wanted to make a donation to the Red Cross as part of the support to the Ukraine, and it was denied because it came from a mining company. And I think if that is not at the core of what the perception is out there about us as an industry, I think nothing would be. And I think that is a starting point, and I'm afraid that I'm talking to the converted here today in the room, but I think as a converted audience, our understanding on how we take the purpose of mining out there is really important. Our common narrative on how we talk about mining is really important. If it's not mined, if it's not grown, it's mined. We all know that. As a civilization, we would not have been where we are today if it wasn't for the metals and the minerals that we mine. And I think over very many centuries, as a mining industry, we continued to play a role in technology development, in societal development, in taking the society and the civilization to where we have it today. And I think we have a continued role and a responsibility to continue to play that role. If we just think about the mining industry in this audience today, and the work that we are doing within the South African economy to support the economy, to do the social economic development that we need to do, to lead the way in the thought leadership that we have on how we are accountable, it is evident that we need to continue to play that role. If we think about the renewables and taking the world into a greener, healthier world that Stephen has spoken to about today, we have a continued role to play, not only in mining the metals in the minerals, not only in making sure that we look after our own decarbonisation, but supplying the metals, supplying the thought leadership, the technology development that will make this new world happen.
And I think that's a great point to kind of latch on to the next step of the conversation, because as we've heard this morning, actually the metals that are being mined by the PGM industry are playing a key role in that process going forward. And so there should be a recognition for the role that we play there. Now, PGMs have quite an interesting contribution to make. And it would be great, and we're going to be talking a lot about that this morning, I'm sure, with the different companies, with their strategies, what they choose to focus on. But maybe a couple of your thoughts around the specific contribution coming from the metals that we make, and how that plays into the bigger transition process.
So PGMs has always played a role in a healthier world. In 1970, one car had the same emissions as 100 cars today. just as a little anecdote. So over all of these decades, PGMs have already played the role in creating a healthy environment. Going forward, we've just looked at the hydrogen economy briefly this morning and the role that PGMs will play in unlocking the hydrogen economy, and also certainly the responsibility that we have, Sandy, for disciplined capital allocation, in understanding how we make sure that the supply is available to unlock that hydrogen economy. So again, not only are metals playing a role in the decarbonisation of the world, but also how we make sure that the supply is actually available. We haven't touched a lot on any of the other industries, but we know health care, we play an important role. Cancer drugs, a number of different health applications. If we consider low loss computing as a future for some of our metals, there's many in food preservation, many other healthier applications for our metals, and our responsibility to be part of the technology development, the pipeline development to unlock this hydrogen economy at the same time.
And it's not just the metals that we mine, but also how we create shared value through that process. And so it's not only us mining our ore body, it's also our broader ecosystem mining our ore body and the value that they can extract.
Absolutely. So when I think about ESG, and it's probably exactly where we want to get to a broader ESG conversation, when I think about ESG, I think the starting point is our ore body and our ability to extract maximum value out of the ore bodies that we are entrusted with. The ore bodies do not belong to us as mining companies. The ore bodies actually belong to the people of this country or the countries we operate in. We also work with money that doesn't belong to us. We work with our shareholders' money. So, and then we have the wonderful people working in the mining industry that make it all happen. So ESG for me is the lens through which we need to extract this enduring value. And we cannot do that in isolation if we don't. It is an ecosystem. And that ecosystem puts us in the middle of the communities in which we operate, the countries in which we operate. The caveat I have is if we don't make money, we cannot put any value back. So mining well, is what us as miners should be doing really well. But we cannot do that in isolation without understanding how that impacts our communities through our environment and our responsibility to our country and our communities to give back and make sure that there's a shared and an equitable value for created in the process.
And so I can see Sandy vacillating here on, is she taking the money back into the casino? Is she giving the waiters tips? Is she going to bring some of it out? So when you look at a project like the Mogalakwena expansion, so how does that concretely translate into shared value? I mean, I've heard some fascinating objectives from you in terms of how you spread that around, while still, as you say, being profitable. So I think the audience would love to hear a little bit more about what that means from a practical implementation perspective, because I think also our communities and our employees keep hearing about these ideals, but are quite interested in the tangible delivery of that.
So let's park for one thing for a moment. We have to make money. Okay, so that is a given. Let's focus on that ecosystem that Sandra is referring to. If we look at Mogalakwena community and the Limpopo province, in the Limpopo province, we're talking a 50% unemployment in the province. When we look at the demographic, 18 to 24 years old, we're talking about a 74% unemployment. We see that we're working with an aging demographic, and that in South Africa specifically, we have a younger and younger population. The reality is we will not be able to mine unless we make sure that there's equitable value into that community. And we see that on a daily basis with the social disruptions we have in our operations. So we have, as an example, a stated intent of developing and supporting the development of 5 jobs outside the gate for every 1 job inside the gate. Because in that flywheel economic development, one of our biggest challenges at the moment as an industry, and as a country, is that in the communities we operate, we are the only economic activity. And it's impossible for mining to drive all of the economic activity we need in this country to overcome the 74% unemployment in that youth group. So what we need to do is a very actively different way of thinking on how we stimulate the economy. We are doing, which I believe is really meaningful work, in local economic development, in our doorstep procurement, in South African procurement. We have a Zimbabwe project, and perhaps a really quick example where we have developed a transport contractor all the way from entrepreneurship training up to the point of seed funding, competing equitably in a contract or in a tendering process and winning fairly and squarely a transport contract, now employing 36 people out of the community. But it's still dependent on mining. So what is the kind of work that we need to do to grow the economy and to see that economic growth outside mining? And that is as much as part of our responsibility, because we extract the value out of this ore body, as it is to make sure that we generate returns for our shareholders.
And I think, again, and Sandy, I'm not picking on you, but that translates to a remark that Sandy made earlier on, which says that in South Africa, the poverty is as important as the environment. And addressing that poverty is as important.
Yes.
And so that also extends to sharing value and value opportunities with BEE partners, for example, in the way that you've chosen to deal with chrome, for example, as a company, right? So not keeping that value in-house, but actually sharing that out so that somebody else can also, although I know not everybody feels the same about chrome in the room probably, but that somebody else can also extract value, right, out of the ore body on a sustainable basis.
Exactly. I think and that probably comes to partnerships and then growing small, medium enterprises and thinking about how we should be working into a collaboration. The reality is what we have when we have us working in our own swim lanes, whether it's within the industry between us as mining companies or within South Africa, we leave white spaces between our swim lanes. And there's a huge amount of value to be generated in between the white spaces if we start to think about collaboration without obviously crossing the lines of competition. But I think in the world of poverty alleviation, that kind of collaboration is really important, and whether that's collaboration and empowerment of small, medium enterprises, or whether it's in other job creation opportunities, I think all of that lies in that collaboration space.
So let's move a little bit closer to home. When you and I were sort of talking about today and doing our planning, it was really interesting to me to see that you had your professional team and that you also had some young people who were sitting in, listening to the conversation, learning, contributing. So what is your view on the youth, how we bring the youth into mining, how we grow the future leadership for this industry, and how we keep people engaged when quite frankly, you know, as you say, we're not viewed as necessarily an aspirational industry anymore.
I think that's a really, really good point and very close to home. I think if there's 2 people that keeps my feet solidly on the ground, it's probably my children. They don't believe anything I say. They test all of my paradigms, and it's interesting that those paradigm testing is very often very accurate in just challenging us in our conventional thinking around how we think about mining and what the alternatives are. And I actually think we're losing an opportunity by not allowing our younger generation to shape our thinking. And we have indeed started to do that, and started, being the operative word, in getting a younger voice into how we should be thinking in developing opportunities. The reality is the conversations we're having today might be a 2 or a 5 year conversations, but the conversations that Steve has led us for many years is a decade conversation. We need to think about this industry in decades. And many of us will not be around in a decade's time, but many of the youngsters, I'm talking about myself.
I thought she was picking on us.
We need to lead in a way that our younger generation wants to be part of the mining industry. And at the moment, they don't want to. Another anecdote is we've got this brilliant young lady who joined our company about 1.5 years ago. And she was just relating how it is one of those job opportunities you don't say no, but she was ashamed to tell her peers that she's working in the mining industry. Up to the point that she now works for us and are truly excited about the impact that she can make. Now her view has changed, and that has opened up opportunities not only for her as an individual, but for us to harness that energy, that insights into taking the industry forward. Not a question, but something probably relevant. Somebody asked me the other day, how do we continue to think about the automation of the industry and how many jobs that's going to take over, or even for that matter, the just transition from a coal point of view. I would argue that we are going to be too slow. That technology development is going to be slower than what we need to bring a new generation on board. And I think we need to turn this whole conversation on its head to say, well, how do we stay abreast? Because we keep on being afraid that these changes that's coming is something that we're not going to manage. I'm concerned that if we don't turn it on its head, we're not going to be in time.
And that's a great segue, Bernard. I'm going to check how much time you're still going to give us before you hit to Q&A. Okay, but I've got one question, and this is a bit of a challenge question. And to the audience, brace yourselves, because you're going to hear this question 5 times today, because it's something that sort of came out of Natascha's team and came from one of the young women working in her team. And it was a question to us about gender-based violence in the industry. Whether women in the PGM industry are truly safe when they go to work. And as I say, for the audience, brace yourselves, because we're going to be talking about this on a slightly more extended basis today. But you told me a story, and this is just before Bernard hands over to the audience, that I've since retold many times that sort of engendered quite a visceral reaction. And it's about women being safe underground, women being safe in the industry, and again, what that means for us as an industry when we talk about attracting diversity, attracting new talent, and attracting new ways of thinking. And it's the PPE story. So if you wouldn't mind repeating that, and I think maybe before we hand you over to the sharks on the other side of Bernard's phone, just a couple of your thoughts about how big a challenge this is in the industry. I think many of us were surprised by the Rio Tinto report. And maybe a couple of thoughts about what we as an industry could do differently to make sure that women feel comfortable and safe entering the industry.
I think a very relevant question. Specifically consider when we're talking about inclusion and diversity, we don't only talk about age, but we're talking about the true full spectrum of inclusion and diversity. And I was not surprised by the Rio Tinto report, because if anybody in this room tells me that we don't face exactly the same challenge in the South African industry, I would argue that you are naive. I've been to one of our operations at the end of last year. I love getting into the operations. That's where the energy is, and that's where I draw huge amounts of my inspiration from. And I was talking to one of the actual senior mining supervisors in the mine. And we were talking about diversity, and PPE came up. Now, PPE is one of those things that irritates me quite a bit, because it's a long-standing conversation. We've been having this conversation for as long as I've been in the industry, that underground, let's do two-piece overalls. It's easier for women to deal with two-piece overalls. And she was reflecting to me that she feels more comfortable in a single piece. I thought, that doesn't make sense in my head. We've been fighting for this for a long time. Why? And a reaction was, she feels safer because it's more trouble to take off a one-piece overall if somebody wants to assault me. Now, if that doesn't go to the gut of our values and our integrity as an industry, then I don't think anything is. I think our challenge, though, it's not only an industry challenge, it's a societal challenge. If we just look at the reality of this across South Africa, the COVID impact that we've seen, it is something that is systemic. And how we respond to this as a mining industry, as leaders, because we have been leading so much of the economy in this country. We are global leaders in terms of thought leaderships around many of these aspects. We have an accountability to continue that conversation. And we need to start in-house. We need to get our own house in order. And I would want to put a challenge out there. If you think you don't have this problem, you need to go and dig deeper.
You have 5 minutes, Bernard.
The groot crocodile just pointed a finger at me. I'm going to sound like Natascha and say, in reality. You like that word, eh?
Yeah.
In reality. You're an engineer, you're still in reality. Well done. Natascha, the first question is from a guy, Emma would have warned you, this ZB Swanepoel. He must be online. So he wants to know, to close the loop to Marco Tefani's promise of 2.5 years ago, that in February the next year, first movement would have taken place. Come on, you know this was coming. When is first movement? Tell the people, what is first movement? Did it happen? When is it happening? How is the hydrogen truck going?
The hydrogen truck's going very well.
Fantastic. When did it go? When was first movement?
The first movement was only a meter, and that was about a month ago. Since then, it's run kilometers. It also now has its bowl on it, and it will take the first load very soon. So it's moved much further than some of the other trucks that was around. And the invitations for the formal launch is going out very soon as well. So it is imminent to present our truck to the world. And if I may, the question you had on whether the comment around the economics and around hydrogen, my answer was no, I didn't agree with that. Because if you look at it as a point solution, it is right. If you compare hydrogen as a fuel directly to diesel and petrol, it is right. Some of our challenges in the mining industry is that we look for point solutions and we never integrate it properly into a system. And what's beautiful about the truck development, it truly integrates the system to make sure that the system ultimately is comparable and is energy efficient to make it economic at the end, not only as a hydrogen fuel.
I'll WhatsApp Marco Tefani and tell him that he's off the hook finally, because every time I saw him, I asked him about first movement and what happened to his promise. From David Mackay, has government effectively left the room in respect of maintaining law and order around your mines?
No. To the contrary, and this is a very personal experience I had in the last couple of months, we have seen, because whilst we're talking community and socioeconomic development, we cannot do that if we don't have law and order around our mines. And we've seen specifically, and we've got colleagues which, and I'm talking on behalf of us as a number of mining houses here, because through the Minerals Council, we collaborated, we've engaged with government on a very specific security challenge that we've had in one of our areas. And we did get the required response. We're still getting that support. Is that a point solution or a sustainable solution is the question we need to get to. And I think for government to be truly successful, we'll have to work on continuing to develop a fuller systemic solution to law and order.
I've got a question from Emmanuel Mayane. Young generation tend to lean on new technology, remote operations, automation apps, etc. Do you believe it will attract younger generation towards mining? You've already gone there. We won't get them unless we automate. But you want to speak to the specific question?
Yeah, perhaps I can use another anecdote, because it feels like if we just talk, it can be motherhood and apple pie statements. At our Mogalakwena operation, we've introduced remote drilling. And when I first visited a couple of years ago, there was in the control room a number of young ladies. I don't know why they tend to be ladies all of the time. And I had a bit of a conversation with one lady around being able to operate this drill in an air-conditioned environment. They're very different from a health and safety point of view, operating one drill. And she said she's only had one problem. She's getting bored. Why can she not operate two drills? So that is the kind of engagement with the younger generation and the different kind of engagement with technology that we need to be sustainable.
Now, you're not allowed to make any top-of-the-cycle mistakes because you just sent all your money back to London. So,
well, yes, and to the PIC. And
so let's talk about Sandy's observation that top-of-the-cycle mining companies repeat mistakes. In one quick answer, Anglo Plat, you're not doing that, and why would you argue you are not making the typical top-of-the-cycle mistakes?
I can't guarantee that we'll never make mistakes. That I'm not going to guarantee. What we do have, I think, is that capital discipline, and we've got a very strong capital, a framework of capital allocation. We are working very hard to stick to that. We've put on top of that disciplined capital allocation framework, we've put a very strong ESG framework where we've, in the last 6 months, evaluated 800 just SIB project. Through that full ESG review as well, to make sure as we think about that capital allocation, we don't only have long-term trends, doing our homework in what we think the market is going to do, being disciplined around engineering design, project execution, also looking at how we consider ESG implications.
In reality, we're out of time. Natascha, thank you very much. Sandra, thank you for the conversation. Sandra. Nico will be joining us next. Thank you, Natascha.
Thank you. When we were getting ready for this session, Nico was very kind. He said, I'm sure I'm up here because people don't want to hear the dry stuff from me. They want to hear the juicy stuff. So I would have never cast Nico in the role of gossip girl. But nonetheless, he's been very kind to say that he's very happy to share with us, I suppose, the question that everybody has on their minds. Now, you've had Sandy saying that at the top of the cycle, Sandy, what is the exact quote? Instead of coming out of the casino and giving him his winnings, you're putting it on red 47. And so I think it would be hard to start this conversation in this audience without hearing from you about the big deal, the rationale behind it, what made it such an exciting opportunity for Impala to pursue.
Thank you, Natascha. I always enjoy these moments where I can get a bit of spotlight and cameras. It's my favorite part of the job.
Just remember, for some of us, this will be the first time we hear about this deal, so just go about slowly.
It's not intimidating at all sitting in front of such an educated audience. Anyway, so just my thoughts on disciplined capital allocation. Whilst I support the shareholder appetite for dividends during these higher parts of the commodity cycle, if I take it to the nth degree, the notion of no investment in your competitive position in future, that doesn't make sense. I mean, then we are all participating in a de facto extinct industry. I mean, so our view is that capital allocation is in making effective decisions in terms of what to return to shareholders and how to invest, and we hope that our investment decisions are judged by history as efficient, and I mean that's not always guaranteed. So with regards to the transaction, I have spoken about the rationale quite a lot, but I will repeat. So if you look at Implats as an organization, we are very happy that we have got world-class diversified assets in South Africa, Canada, as well as Zimbabwe. But one of our cornerstone assets is the lease area, it's Rustenburg. It has got a defined life of mine. I mean, it's where the PGM industry originated. And it is predicted to start declining production in 7 to 10 years. Now, in Rustenburg, we require a critical base in order to offset the fixed cost of all the large infrastructure that we have. And so in the absence of replacing the decline in production, we are faced with an existential threat that our cornerstone asset will come to an end of life, and then associated with that will be the loss of job opportunities, the inability to contribute to social investment in the area, the inability to contribute to the fiscus. So this is personally, I think this is beyond just an Implats concern. It is actually an industry and a national concern. And so the first point of departure was that we have to protect our future, and to that extent, the integration of contiguous assets makes immense sense because it provides a much more sustainable base load for our infrastructure in Rustenburg, and therefore all of the benefits to society that I've just spoken to. In addition to that, there are all the obvious synergies associated with contiguous assets. So it will be very, very easy, or it will be a lot easier for us to extend our 20 shaft into the Stelldorp 2 area. We've got shared infrastructure, and quite frankly, I do believe it is the only solution that will ever bring Stelldorp 2 resources and reserves to fruition. I think in the absence of this transaction, whilst everyone recognizes the pristine quality of the RB Platts Merensky Reserve, if there is no technically and commercial solution to exploit it, it will be lost to the companies, to the shareholders, to the country, and the future employment opportunities. So it is a very important transaction for us, and which is why we will pursue it very aggressively.
And so, Nico, on that point, with where you are in the transaction at the moment, how do you see that end game? What do you see that final picture, and how do you see your ability, given where you are in the corporate action, to actually be able to reap those benefits from the transaction?
Well, the end position is going to be 100% control of the company. I mean, it may take a while. I mean, we obviously have to forge a different path to what we envisaged originally. But the fact that there's a competing party doesn't detract us from our ultimate goal. I do believe that the greater the equity participation we have in that asset, the greater our ability to leverage synergies for all stakeholders, including current RB Platts shareholders, Implats shareholders, communities, employees, and the government. I mean, it's very difficult for me to forecast exactly how that process will unfold, because I'm not entirely, neither me or the company is entirely in control of that process. There's competition commission, there's regulatory process that we have to go, and there are still some key shareholders that have to take a formal position. So we have to allow the process to unfold, and on conclusion of that, there will be tactics, strategies developed to pursue our end goal, which we will continue to do aggressively.
This is obviously also a big investment in South Africa.
Absolutely.
Versus some of the other jurisdictions that you have available to invest in. So I understand what you're saying about the defensive nature of the acquisition to one extent, but you've invested in a couple of other interesting jurisdictions that would similarly have fewer challenges. And that offer their own specific rewards and opportunities.
Yeah, so if I can just recall a bit of the history of Implats, 2008 to 2018, very traumatic. We hung on with our fingernails. I spoke to some of the shareholders, and at some point I was told that when fund managers got together in Cape Town and they assessed Implats, they regarded the company as uninvestable, which is a rather precarious predicament. Anyway, so I think, not myself, but the team, the board, has done exceptionally well to leverage the good fortunes of the change in what was first the exchange rate, the rand-dollar exchange rate, and then the basket price. So I think the team has done exceptionally well to remove debt from the balance sheet, to create a really strong balance sheet. And then it was critical for us strategically to invest in our future. And we thought that we could do this. That's proven to be correct, that we can do this at the same time as rewarding shareholders. So, we have said from day one that our ambition is to convert to increased levels of mechanization, shallower reserves, and future-facing demand. So, and to diversify our jurisdictions in which we operate. So, if you look at the big projects in which we invested, which includes the Marinsky at Two Rivers with our very strong partners there, African Rainbow Minerals. If you look at what Alex is doing in Zimplats with his expansion project, when both of those assets are run by very professional teams that have a history of success. It's shallow, it's at the lower end of the cost curve, world-class assets. And so that plays into our narrative to improve our long-term competitive position. And almost the thing that I'm most proud of, besides these mining projects, is the decisions that the board approved with regards to our investment in our processing capacity expansion going forward. I'm not sure that everyone is aware, but over a period, the mineralogy of our concentrate is changing. There's an ever-increasing base load. So, I find it very odd that the PGM production has reduced, but the entire industry is constrained from a processing point of view. So the fact that we are adding not only concentrators, that we are adding another smelter in Zimplats, that we are debottlenecking our base metal refinery, I really believe that's ultimately going to be a very strong competitive advantage as this base metal content keeps on increasing. And so when I look at all of the investments that we have done, I think it feeds directly into supporting a very strong competitive position for the next generation when we exit.
So I'm going to be speaking to Fivos a little bit later, and I'm also going to be asking him the same question around investment in Zimbabwe. How is that operating environment? How comfortable are you there? How does that contrast to your South African operating environment? And what are the kind of key drivers that makes you comfortable to operate and continue to invest in?
Well, from a group perspective, I would have to say that Zimbabwe has probably been our best jurisdiction to operate in over the last 20 years. It's the jurisdiction in which, thanks to the leadership of Alex and his team, we have the least amount of disruptions. We have the most predictable production profile. We've got the safest operations, the best control over our costs. Our projects, don't ask me how, but they are always on time, on schedule. I think they budget very conservatively, but and so personally, I'm quite happy that the jurisdiction is seen as a risk by most other competitors because it allows us to continue expanding our interest in the jurisdiction. I would be wrong and naive if I said that there is no risk, because a government that is desperate for foreign currency earnings will often and frequently attempt to extract a greater proportion of our foreign currency earnings. But again, thanks to the leadership of the team, the board, the financial control leadership in our company, we have been able to navigate that without a single hiccup so far. We can extract all of our dividends that we declare. And so it is, Bernard was was there on Monday. It's just everything about it is just great. So if you can overcome the political risk and the macroeconomic risk of the jurisdiction. And to give you an example, we did the Kadoma Regional Hospital. Now it's a very small village hospital that we opened, and when we had the opening, I attended with the CEO of Zimplats, the president, and 5 ministers. And that's the way in which Zimbabwe thanks a mining company. Now, in South Africa, when we open something 10 times the size, we are pelted with apples and oranges and whatever because we're not doing enough. And so the support between government and the mining operations is just something that is very difficult to explain, but there's this symbiosis between the two entities that has kept our ambition very high to continue expanding in Zim.
It's, I think it's for the audience also sort of interesting to hear what government support can look like when you're making large capital investments. So the experience in Canada, if you had to compare and contrast to the two African jurisdictions?
I think from a regulatory point of view, obviously, Canada is a mining-friendly jurisdiction, very easy to invest there. We were very fortunate that the palladium price was very strong subsequent to our acquisition. I also would be lying if I said that our operational performance has been exactly to expectation. It's probably an asset that we have had greater aspirations, and we probably have to do a bit more work. It is an asset that was owned by a private equity fund, and so we understood that it was undercapitalized. But I think we've got more work to do, particularly given the fact that everyone is predicting a decline in the long-term palladium price. So, you don't have 20 years to perfect your efficiency, and so there's a lot of pressure internally in order for us to match our own aspirations in ramping up production and maintaining a cost below $1,000 an ounce. So, a great jurisdiction. Also, Canada has had, in a bizarre way, has had a much bigger influence as a consequence of COVID than any of the other jurisdictions in which we operate. So if I look at how the government clamped down and what impact it had on society, it is a remote operation. It requires fly-in, fly-out arrangements. In Canada, industry makes a use of migrant labor. So import of foreign skills during COVID, that dried up. Now there's a massive competition for skills, and we don't compete with other mining companies. We compete with the forestry industry, the factories at Thunder Bay next to a lake. So there has been a significant challenge in recruiting and retaining talent. People don't want to fly in and fly out and be away from the families. During COVID, there's a greater appreciation for the value associated with living with your wife and kids and seeing them grow up. There's a much greater competition for skills. And so I would suggest that the operating experience in Canada for me has been a learning. It's very easy to assume it's first world country, great skills and so on. Actually, it's got its own set of challenges compared to Zim or South Africa.
Don't you also see that competition for skills increasing in South Africa? It's been interesting to me to take a look, at the government's list of occupations that was recently published for which they would still grant foreign workers visas. It was interesting to me to see how many of those occupations were actually mining roles, when one would imagine that we would have a wealth of mining expertise in this country. Are you seeing that same level of competition for skills in South Africa?
Yeah, but I think we are our own worst enemies. I mean, I can remember when I entered the mining industry, every mining company had a massive training division, when it was graduates or artisans. I mean, we trained up everything, and then at some point, we decided it's not worth the investment. And one after the other, as an industry, we shut down all of our education and training capabilities. I mean, and this, I think, happened in the late 80s, 90s. We have a responsibility to bring some of that back. I mean, to sit here and complain about the shortage of skills whilst we are doing totally an insufficient investment in that is stupid. So I do think that firstly, the statement is correct. Secondly, we are in control of our own destiny. We must get off our bums and do something about it. We have got control over that.
So I'm also going to ask you, again, before I hand over to Bernard and the audience, questions. You and I and Emma had this conversation prompted again by the conversation with Natascha's team about keeping women safe in the mining industry. And we touched on the question about society and the societal challenge versus whether there is something different in the mining industry that says we need to do more, or we need to have a point of focus. And I think the example we used was the simple fact of getting into a cage crammed up against, your 25 best friends who are men. And I think all of us have had a chance to go underground and to experience what it feels like getting into a cage. What do you think it is that creates that challenge for us in the industry? Is it just the circumstances?
So I'm possibly a bit more critical than Natascha about the state of lawlessness and the government's competence in dealing with it. So, firstly, I do agree with Natascha in terms of it's not a mining industry issue, it's a societal issue, not only in South Africa, but in many parts of the world. And sadly, I think the mining industry contributed to it when we broke down the family unit and we had migrant labor and fathers away from the house and children had no strong role models. But I do think when you have roads with potholes that are not fixed, when you allow taxis to drive the way they do, when you allow obvious corruption in government and you have inquiry after inquiry with no prosecution, you're creating a decay in the moral fiber of society. There's no consequences. And where do you stop that? And then you take that and you expand that, and then gender-based violence forms part of a greater value system and moral decay. And I believe government has a phenomenal responsibility to jack up their response, and I think they are contributing to that. I think the mining industry contributed to it with our migrant labor, and so we have to focus on the family unit. But I also think that there's a lot more that we have to do. You have to provide a greater purpose to life other than just coming to work and earning money. I find in societies where people aspire to a greater purpose, and that could be through a richer experience, having career paths, having a community at work where respect and trust is cultivated. I think that there are different ways to cultivate that through our employment, to create a greater purpose for people so that theft, crime, gender-based violence becomes a lower incentive or aspiration for people. I think there's a lot that we can do in terms of work design. Natascha spoke about it, everyone talks about it. I think increased use of technology. I do believe that we have to be very careful in terms of how and where we employ females. And so in the absence of, let's say, tracking technology, the notion of having a solo female working in a 2-kilometer dark decline on her own, I don't think that's in any environment that's necessarily a great thought. So I think that there's a lot that companies can do in terms of work design, in terms of how to group women, whether it's buddy systems or in teams, having tracking devices, having either leaky feeder or digital antenna radar systems where people can be tracked, monitored, and to integrate work design with technology in order to provide a far higher level of protection. But if you don't take away the underlying motivation to commit gender-based violence, I suspect that no combination of work design and technology is ever going to prove sufficient.
I agree.
Sandra, we have got a build-up of questions here, and I better get to some of the tough questions. Natascha, you may have to buy Nico a beer because some of these questions are flow-overs from your session. Everybody's pointing fingers at me today, eh? Nico, the first question is clearly for you from Robert Goosen, pointing out that the Northern Limbs PGM contribution is going to be more significant in future. Except for Implatz's current 15%, have you closed the door on Waterburg?
I think we have consistently stated that we are excited about the asset that meets many of our critical criteria. It's shallow, it's mechanized. I believe it will be at the lower end of the cost curve. But you have to have a feasibility study with integrity that meets the company hurdle rates. It is more palladium biased. That is a reservation. So you have to have a confidence and a metal price forecast. It's not only, I mean, it's not a palladium mine, but it has a stronger bias. So it has to meet the internal investment criteria of the company in order to, because it's competing with other projects. So when I compare a Waterburg with a Tourism Merensky or Zimbabwe expansion, it has not come out as the most favorable one. We retain a very excited option on it, and so we have by no means closed the door.
From Sudhir Surujal, I do apologize up front for mispronunciations of names and surnames. Assuming that the hydrogen economy is likely to be the saving grace for the PGM industry, do you think there's an opportunity for more to be done to make this a reality? And what could Implatz's role in this be?
So I think that there is a responsibility on PGM companies to participate in developing PGM-friendly technology in the hydrogen sphere. What we are doing at the moment, we are participating in AP Ventures, which I didn't want to do for many years because it was Anglo Platinum Ventures, so I had a moral resistance until I found out what they are actually doing. They're doing fantastic work. I mean, their focus is exactly on developing PGM-friendly technology, but then also in developing opportunities for South Africa. And so we subscribe to both of those aspirations. And also, through the opportunities that they are investing in developing, there is an opportunity for each of the contributing members to participate through separate investments. So that provides an opportunity, and I don't foreclose that as a potential avenue that we may wish to pursue. And I mean, we've had a small number of projects, like Natascha has had a truck, we had a forklift. Now, I'm not sure if it can compare, but nevertheless, it's
one forklift, one truck. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there.
No, I shouldn't say it very loudly, but anyway, that's been our little effort. And I mean, the big question for me, and I like what they are doing, because you have to think about scalability. So to develop a hydrogen forklift in itself is meaningless unless there is a path between that forklift and an entire industry, which means multiple users with infrastructures to support it. And so we are having conversations with different technology players in the space, and we do see that not only as an obligation but an opportunity for the company to participate in that part of the value chain in order to increase our participation in value chain, and at the same time to support a growth of PGM demand in future through the hydrogen economy.
So Ed Stoddard calls this a question, but it's a bit of a narrative about how bad ZANU-PF's record of atrocities historically has been, etc., etc., etc. Towards the end, the question is, how does working with such a state square with your commitment to ESG? And then another statement, the taxes you pay there buy guns, don't pay for butter. So, I mean, are you comfortable to invest in the Zimbabwean context with the history of that country and that government specifically?
We are very comfortable, and I think that our participation is always aimed at improving conditions. And so, if I think about the social impact of what both Mimosa and Zimplats has contributed to, obviously there are concerns, history about the ESG factors, but I think you're in a far more constructive position if you participate within the economy, and your ability to influence it in a positive direction is strengthened, particularly when you occupy the kind of strategic position that Zimplats in particular does. I think it does provide you with a lot of leverage to encourage and coerce authorities to move in the right direction.
The next question from Judith Radinko should convince all mining companies to stop publishing annual reports because nobody reads them anyway, especially outside of the CEO salary section. It's a long narrative about what are you doing to improve standards of living, local communities, are you helping youth, are you doing social development? Perfectly legitimate question, but as mining companies we often think we've dispensed of the communication by putting it in a flashy report. So briefly, are you as a mining company doing any of these good community, this is very community focused, is the community as a stakeholder important in your life, and is it getting attention?
I don't want to talk only on behalf of Implats. I mean, I occasionally participate in the Minerals Council. I get to meet leaders within the industry, and I don't know of a single mining leader in this country, perhaps globally, for whom this is not a critical cornerstone of their business. I'm not saying it because I want to promote it. It's just a fact. I mean, I do not believe you can become a mining executive unless this is a core part, a fundamental part. And then most of us are South Africans, and we've grown up in this environment, and we fundamentally understand the need for it. So, like all of the other companies, our contributions, I think the one thing that we are very poor at is advertising and communicating exactly what we do. You are far better than most of us, Natascha, but I think a self-criticism is that we don't showcase the contribution of mining industry to the nation, and hence people are embarrassed to say that they are part of it. And we do that over, I mean, I don't want to educate the industry, but it's not only employment, it's social investment, it's creating participation in the procurement, it's developing entrepreneurs. I mean, so if I look at, maybe I'll come locally to what John, who I think is in the audience here, contributed towards COVID, not for Implats, for every community in which we operated. And the support that we gave to government, I mean, that's just one example. I can talk about all of the social infrastructure and enterprise development, but just through the last 2 years, I've been absolutely astounded by the ability of our medical team to place such a profound impact in supporting not only our 50,000 employees, but the 3 million people around in which we operate.
I'm going to bring this session to an end with a comment from, I wish I could speak French, Jumian Pecure. Apologies for the pronunciation, but I obviously personally totally agree. The consequences for any gender-based assault in the workplace and anywhere else needs to be severe. Such consequences needs to be explicitly stated and implemented. Amen, yes, viva, we agree. And I think as an industry, perhaps we aren't yet doing exactly that as an absolute basic minimum. Meneer Muller, thank you. Sandra?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're now joined by the sexiest man in the industry. Everybody wants him, I'm told. I'm not that way inclined, but each one to his own. Steve, I've never looked at you like I wish I could have 38.7% of you, but I'm after 39% of you. Sandra, talk sense.
I mean, I was going to use a father of the bride analogy, Bernard, but you've cast Steve in the leading man role there, and obviously it's the only place to start, right? So we've heard from Nico. He's going to fight till the death.
Hey.
He said the goal is 100%. So what is it that makes RB-Plats such a hot property, in an industry where I think, was it Nico who said, between 2008 and 2018 was just absolutely horrible and people thought we were at the death of PGMs. What is it about your asset that you think is drawing all this attention?
Thanks, Andras. Thanks, Bernard. Nobody wants Steve Phiri. I could be a little bit of a hands-full for people. They want the asset. So they want the asset without me. But I'm okay.
It's not true, but it's a good line.
But fortunately, I'm probably the oldest person in the room, or one of the oldest, so I'm going west soon. So we've got a very wonderful asset, and which was started, it was started by Anglo Platinum in 1997, 98 as BRPM on a 50-50 joint venture with Royal Bafokeng Nation. It's a wonderful asset, but the life of BRPM was always going to be short with not the full capital return on investment without stale drift, and therefore that's what led to the 50-50 joint venture with Bafokeng, and therefore that made this beautiful asset. It's fully capitalized. It's deleveraged completely. We have just completed a big, I think it's the biggest platinum mine in the world, stale drift, quite shallow, high grade, mechanized, fully capitalized, and we're a rural black company, so-called. When we started in 2010, when we listed in 2010, nobody gave us a chance. Firstly, to raise capital from the market, and secondly, as one of the people who put a lot of capital on the project. But people did not give us a chance of succeeding, and thanks to the people who had confidence in us. And it's a 13 point something, 14 billion rands project. It's operated so well, but it still has longevity, still left one, but more optionality with still left two, which is probably a better ore body even than still left one. A bigger one for that matter, which constitutes 40% of our total ore resource. So if you look at growth, and I heard this morning pundits talking about the future of platinum. If you believe in the future of platinum, especially in the future of hydrogen economy, this is the place to be. Because if you want that opportunity, that optionality to participate in the market long term, there is no other good asset than this one other than Mogalakwena. I really need to put that to debate to say, is there any other asset? And it is not surprising that the two big guys are fighting over this. They're entitled to do so. It's good for the shareholders. Them good for the shareholders. It's just that it turned out to be quite a messy affair unnecessarily. But it's exciting though.
Good exciting and bad exciting. and so to you, what do you think the outcome should be? What do you think? I mean, we've heard Nico say, 100% is the outcome.
Yeah.
What do you think?
If I was not from the area, born and bred, grew up in the area, I'd probably say I don't care, but I do care because it's important. But if I was not sensible I would say I don't care. But I love the industry. Other than the fact that I come from Phokeng, I love the industry. And let me tell you what we as a company, including me, we would have loved to see. We always had three options with regard to RP Pledge. It's small. There was always going to be consolidation. We did not close our minds to the possibility of a corporate action at one point or the other. So that was going to be a phenomenon. However, we said we could stay the way we are and grow because we've got the asset to grow, organic growth, but we need capital. And Sandy would not allow me to. So he said, the way things are looking, consolidation is a better way to tap into the capital market. Bigger, and therefore you can tap into capital market or use your internal cash flows as a bigger combined entity. And therefore, if you therefore cannot grow organically because of those constraints, there are probably two, if not three, opportunities for an M&A transaction. That would make sense, differing in degrees. The first one would be a consolidation with Impala Platinum because of the synergies that Nico talked about, operational synergies, cost synergies, you name them. But most importantly, creating jobs, sustaining jobs, and protecting jobs in the area with the lease area declining. You tap into STELREF, you tap into BRPM, but more STELREF too, therefore you can continue at least saving more jobs. It's important to do so to keep the economic sustainability of the region going. Because you destroy the lease area, you are definitely destroying the whole region economically and otherwise. So that is the biggest synergy in my opinion, and our opinion. And there are many other synergies, but the biggest advantage is the social return component of the consolidation with Impala Platinum. The second option would be, if that did not happen, the northern option was always a possibility. Two good companies, quality assets, quality management, fairly capitalize both of them, and the measure of the two will bulk up and increase the cash flow pool for the shareholders. But it always lacked the synergy that Impala has. And therefore, it makes sense to talk about Impala having Impala synergy, option having more advantage than the other one. It's a pros and cons game. So what is happening, there's nothing wrong with not them bidding for it because they are also a quality company. But fact of the matter is, we are in a situation where I would say a flux or a tension for bidding for the asset. One would have to fall, one would have to survive. The likely scenario is, let me hasten to say, where we are sitting now, we only have one offer on the table, and that is Impala Platinum. And that is what we are supporting as a company. The independent board has decided to recommend the offer from Impala Platinum. The other offer, even though there is a significant shareholder already, it's a talk, maybe aspirational, but it is not concrete on the table. And shareholders cannot crack their heads about an offer which is not here on the table. And the likely scenario is that Impala Platinum would succeed to 51% or more, or 100 for that matter. Good luck, Nico. Would succeed and therefore control the asset, control the company. The other scenario is that Northern might come at a later stage and bid before the closure, before the offer closes. We don't know. And might get 51%, we don't know. All this is the decision of shareholders who are still holding some shares. We cannot dictate to them because they also want value out of their investment. The other scenario is that there could be a neck and neck, with no one having control. In which event, that's why people like me are here, the older ones will take a stick and beat the hell out of their heads. The boys come together, you're going to talk, you can't destroy this beautiful creation of God and creation of the people. You've got to operate this thing in a manner that you do not destroy the quality that is built into the state. So there could be a joint venture situation in the circumstances. But it's all about individuals and personalities. Are they prepared to work together? Would they work together? Would they build or would they destroy?
Mm. And so what you are talking about is that challenge of being a leader in a company that is now the subject of corporate action and therefore in flux.
Yeah.
And maybe if you can share with the audience a little bit about that experience, because it's all well and good to have the corporate action, sort of ongoing for months now,
Yeah.
but you still have an asset to run.
Yeah.
And you still have employees to keep motivated. And what does that look like day to day?
Yeah, I always remind myself, and I always remember that I'm not here for Steve Phiri. I'm here employed by and working for the shareholders of the company. And the shareholders invest in this company because of the quality thereof and invest for a return. And if I destroy that return because of my personal feelings and emotions, and I get angry and frustrated with all what's happening, we'll end up with no company. And we'll end up with nothing either for Nico or Paul to buy. But more will end up with shareholders saying, you, Steve, destroy the company. We paid you a salary. Whether somebody was buying you or not, you're supposed to look after the asset. So that is my responsibility. I've got to keep value intact and preserve this value. But most importantly, Sandra, I have got to look after the workers, the stakeholders, the people who are the business of this business. There is no business without the workers. The workers are not the assets in the business, they are the business. These two companies, Impala and Northam, would not have developed an interest in this business, in these assets, if it was not for the people who added value, created this value that the people are buying. So virtually, Nico, you're buying the workers because you're buying the business, and the business is the workers. So that goes to leadership to say when you are a leader of any organization, it does not matter whether it's a business or organization or non-profit organization, you ignore the workers at your own peril because they make you great and they can make you nothing. People want to be respected. You may not love them, but they want to be respected and appreciated. And once you show that appreciation, it's amazing what you get out of the people who feel appreciated. And I think this emanates from how one is brought up. If you are brought up to know that as a human being, the respect that you think you deserve must be reciprocated and given back to the people to get what you want also for people to give you. So, yes, in the state of flux, the people have been very, very important on an ongoing basis, at least on a weekly basis. In one form or the other, we speak to the workers and we update them of the development of this M&A transaction. Say, keep holding, this is what's happening, don't worry, your jobs are safe, because the people are buying this asset, this quality because of you. Without you, they would not be buying this thing. So, and we get a feedback from them, the comfort and what have you, but we don't only speak to the workers, we also speak to the community. We also speak to the suppliers, to people who are providing services, because there's consternation. So what's going to happen if this guy comes in there? Am I still going to keep the contract? So we hold those meetings, we address them, we issue communiques to them, for them to understand that this is a corporate action at higher level. You are not affected at operational level. Don't worry.
I think it's probably often one of the underestimated or underappreciated impacts of corporate action is that impact on people and corporate culture.
Absolutely.
And so when you and I spoke, and we've heard a lot of the leadership talking this morning about communities, relationships with communities, work interruptions, how they engage, you seem to have built really solid relationships with your communities. How did you do that, and what has been the benefit to you of that legacy of positive and respectful relationships with the communities around you?
Well, I work with a team that understands that people are important. If I'm important, therefore the other person is probably more important than me. So that is the philosophy in the company. And I don't know whether Nico is still applying that philosophy, because we developed it together when we took over operational control from Anglo Platinum. When we built the pillars of our strategy, the first one still is operational excellence. And engraved in that operational excellence pillar is the people. The people are the anchor of our strategy. And when we embellish on that point, the people, you talk about the workers, you've got the stakeholders, including the workers, the community, government, and all the other people. If you have, those are the instruments that you use to build relationships, to build rapport, to build stability, to build sustainability. You may be having a damn good asset. That asset means nothing if you don't have people to extract what you have in that asset and bring efficiencies into the asset. So we have done that, and I think it's what people should be like. And I always struggle with the question that comes to say, how do you get it right? How do I get it right to live with people and respect people as people? It should be so natural. I don't understand. How do people behave than behaving as people like they want, you know? So that's we. We are who we are. And it's in our DNA to be people and treat people as people. And it's important to do that.
And so you've been reaping the reward of that, both internally and externally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I speak to everyone. My door is open. My executives' doors are open. Whether it's an ordinary worker in the stoping area or a senior employee, I pick up calls from workers. I get SMSs and WhatsApps. My email address is not a secret. I get reports, and I communicate back to them either directly or through the communications desk. We talk about the business of the business. Some people tell me how excited they are about things that are happening. Some people complain, and we try to address those complaints. The most important thing is that you create relationships when things are good. Because when things go sour, you are able to communicate and jointly look for solutions than confrontation.
And so again, when you and I did our preparation for this session, and we spoke about women in the workplace, you gave me a very powerful example, and you used the word denigration.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I had this morning talking about gender-based violence. It's more than gender-based violence, because gender-based violence is hidden in most cases. It happens in the dark corners and all of you. It's attitudinal. It is the mentality, paternalistic, chauvinistic mentality of South African males, if I may talk about that. And it goes to discrimination against women, generally speaking. Be it black women, white women, and what have you, discrimination against women in the workplaces, and it comes from our homes. And we transport that mentality to the workplace. And we get surprised when these things happen at the workplace. We forget that that's what we do. If I mistreat a woman at work, quite for sure, I'm likely doing it at home. It comes from home. So what we can do as mining executives, as mining, we can do our work, at least try to stop it at the workplace. It's a serious denigration of women, undermining women, talking to them in a rough way. And the example I used, I picked up in one of the reports, innocuous, written, that some woman was told in a meeting, a manager, that I'm not told by tea ladies what to do. So, when I looked at this, I said, but where the statement come? Then I started tracing. So this is a black woman being told by a white man that, and she's a manager, that she's a tea lady. You can't tell me anything. So other than being a female being told you're a tea lady, there is also racial discrimination tone in that. Because in a South African context, a tea lady in most cases is a black lady. So, and what did we do with this? No, we brought them together and they shook hands and it's forgiven. I said, no way. Before sunset, this man must be out of the business completely. I don't care whether you go to CCMA, Labour Court or Constitutional Court, whatever. I don't want to see this man at work, in our company. And it happened. As simple as that. I would rather have a situation where I've got serious litigation take years than to give a person and countenance a behavior of this nature in a workplace. If you lose that opportunity, if you use opportunity, especially a senior man, senior person, to fire a senior person for that kind of a thing, what better example are you going to get? What better opportunity are you going to get to set an example? Yeah.
Beat that, Bernard.
Thank you. Our audience is in a different place. So the first question is, do you think having two different shareholders are going to impact on your ability to fully develop your mine, your lease area going forward? Do you expect that they will bring different demands on capital allocation, etc.?
Well, as I said earlier on, again, it depends on the personalities. If you have those two big shareholders come a particular point, there has to be a serious talk, a serious discussion.
With the old people in the room.
Yeah.
And a stick, I believe a stick was involved.
So that definitely has to happen. I don't necessarily think that there will be a problem in further development, at least keeping the mine sustaining the current output. I don't think there will be a problem. Otherwise, how do you put money in the business and destroy it by, not voting on capital allocations to make money out of the same business? The problem might come with capital allocations with regard to growth, say still of 2. But it depends again on the return that you see in your model.
I actually read the answer to the next question of Judith Rodinko in the press, but she asked it, and I want to hear you again. Why did RB Platt sell shares, and did RB Platt consult, it must be holdings, consult the Bafokeng people before selling the shares?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm running RB Platt. I'm not running RBH.
You've become political now. I mean, you misquoted before.
I don't know whether they consulted the Bafokeng people, but from what I read, also they did it.
I love this. I'm quoting Steve Phiri. When I read the article, well done, Steve. I must.
What I can say is that we, as RB Plate, were surprised by the announcement.
And that was what you said before, yeah. That's what we all read, yeah. I must say, when you speak on leadership, you know, tomorrow afternoon, my amazing wife launches her second book on leading for engagement, and I'm not punting it, but I think you can just let Steve speak. It is truly as simple as Steve makes it sound. It is just engage with your people, and they will engage and be engaged. Fantastic. That was a masterclass in leadership, Sandra. We're going to package that, and if you're okay with it, share it widely, because you, we're gonna miss you, Madala. Don't go too far away. There's a question from Albert van Sail. What is your view on the draft labour migration policy? What is your exposure to foreign workers, and who may be affected by this? Are you affected by that? Have you got views on that?
Well, yeah, we do have foreign workers, particularly at our BRPM mine, which is the old mine, and I think most old mines do have a good component of migrant laborers. Just to give you an example, some of our workers, especially the majority, let me put it that way, of our migrant laborers, foreign workers, were there at BRPM ever since the inception. So they become permanent, real workers of the company, they build the company. So we will be affected. I can safely hazard a guess to say around 30% of our workers at BRPM are foreign workers. So we will be affected.
Ladies, I'm going to be, yes, I'm going to do a risky thing. Give that man a microphone. If he misbehaves, it will never happen again. Brendan Ryan's got a question. Brendan, final question to Steve.
Steve, you were quoted in an article as saying that RBH had abandoned shareholders. What exactly did you mean by that?
We should not have allowed him to ask that question, but now we did allow him, Steve.
Brendan, ask the man next to you. He's the guy who wrote that. When I said that, and I want people to hear me and read that in context, I represent the shareholders who employ me in my position. And when we listed this company in 2010, and I did parrot fishing and subsequently the road show to go list, we went to numerous shareholders in this country and abroad to sell the company, to sell the asset, and many people who have done listings, IPOs, would know that. Firstly, they want to know the asset. They want to know who owns the asset. What is the commitment of the founding shareholder of this? Which where, do I have support? Do I have longevity? Do I have security of tenure here? And we had a script, because remember that you've got a history of this land, of the owner of acquisition of land. People who are permanent in the area. And this asset is owned by the community, has been preserved by the community, and it needs to be developed in the best interest of this community to sustain economic development in the area. So that's the script. And therefore, the owner of this asset says, come and invest alongside me to make good out of this asset. And I'm here to stay, and I guarantee you my stay. So when you do that, then shareholders, institutions put money alongside you, put money alongside, and put money on, and they put money on Stellareft. And it takes 10 years to realize that return in the form of dividend. And you start paying dividend. And before you realize that value accretion comes only in the form of equity and what have you, that shareholder, and I'm talking about realm of key holders, then sells out without you to somebody who does not take you along and make an offer to you too, but makes an offer to the shareholder. That's an abandonment. That's what I mean.
Steve, I have to call this to an end. For 29 of the 30 minutes, you could hear a pin drop. I don't think we've ever had a more profound moment to have the right man, one of the giants of our industry. You do not see the ultimate compliment is right at the end. What you've created, the whole world wants and wants more of. There's also a personal compliment in that to you and your team. Truly one of the giants of our industry. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we now switch, Bernard, to the virtual part.
I'm praying.
The quasi-virtual, quasi-live part. So, Fivos, if you can turn on your camera, you joining us digitally today, and it's a little bit, I suppose, disconcerting when you're sitting on stage, right, Bernard? Because you can see the audience looking at the screens, and you're thinking, am I not here on stage? But Phivos, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Thank you for joining us virtually. And I don't know from a technical perspective if the team is able to keep Phivos up on the screen.
They will do that, yeah.
Okay, I'm happy to kind of navigate through this virtually. But there are a couple of themes that are beginning to emerge in the day, and M&A has obviously been a big theme. And we've just seen Tharisa announcing the Karo investment in Zimbabwe at a project level and a significant investment. And I think a great way to sort of kick off the conversation, sort of in contrast to this corporate battle that we're seeing happening between Northern and Impala over RB Platts, you've chosen a slightly different route. Have we lost Phivos, or is it just the screen? He's here. Okay, brilliant, thank you.
Show him the whole time, please. Can we show him the whole time? Okay, so the audience is here to see him, not me, so please show him. Phivos, you're not particularly pretty, but you're prettier than me, so the audience has demanded to see you, okay?
Thank you, Vulcan. Take it as a compliment. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to attend today. So I think if you just look at the DNA of our business and where we start from and where we think we add the most value to our shareholders and stakeholders, and that is in building mines. And the Tharisa mine situated in Marikana is a point in case. Most people dismiss the resource as non-viable due to the low-ish grades of PGMs and chrome, and we took a unique approach in developing this significant ore body in today what is a very robust business case of a co-producer of PGMs and chrome concentrate. We've all seen that curve, that hockey stick curve of the development and value of a resource, and we think we play a vital role in that space, and there are very few players in the PGM sector that do what we do. So we differentiate ourselves by the fact that we build mines, create investment through greenfield operations, and on the back of the success of Tharisa, it was logical and clearly stated in our investment strategy and our vision going forward that we'd look at multi-jurisdiction, multi-projects, and move away from a single asset to multi-assets. And what better jurisdiction than the Great Dyke of Zimbabwe, where we have the benefit and in fact the responsibility to develop a tier 1 PGM resource in the center of the Great Dyke, hence us making this announcement. Now, I think one has to put it in the context of the time it takes to make these types of decisions. So it's not an overnight decision. These are years in the making. And as a broader group, we've been looking in Zimbabwe for over a decade at opportunities. And only since 2018 were we able to secure the special grant over this vital piece of virgin real estate. And with the disruption of COVID, maybe our plans were slightly delayed, but what it did was allowed us to look at a measured, calculated approach to developing this world-class asset. And I think, just to give everyone the context, it's very similar to what we have at the Tharisa mine. A large-scale, open pit, quick-to-market resource. So we've already started with the development of the project, anticipate being in first production within 24 months, which when you look at sort of deep-level investment shaft complexes is considerably quicker to market. And we want to enjoy those benefits that Nico so aptly portrayed of Zimbabwe. And it has been our experience as well that the government and the various departments from regional through to national bodies have been extremely supportive of our investment case into Zimbabwe and have created an enabling environment for us to get to this investment decision.
And I mean, Fivos, do you think Nico and his team's good citizenship is something that sort of paved the way for you in that region to be able to enjoy those benefits, get off the ground, have great examples of a solid operating model and a skilled workforce?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it that having an established PGM mining industry on the Great Dyke makes it easier for us to be a new entrant into the space. The infrastructure alone is testament to their investment, and as well as Unki and Sibanye in terms of Anglo's investment in Unki, and the level of skills that we see on the Great Dyke in terms of quality of labor, skill set, and work ethic is something that we haven't experienced, generally speaking, and we welcome it, and it really is an asset to any new development in country.
I mean, that's great to hear. One of my own colleagues, God knows, Njua is I think well known in the industry as a product of the Zimbabwean mining education system, and so I think we certainly see the benefits of that investment in education. So I want to circle back to something that you started off with, Fivos. When I think of Tharisa, kind of without concentrating, I think chrome. And then Bernard invites you to PGMs Day. And you've called yourself a co-producer. It's an interesting strategy, or it's an interesting origin that sets you apart a little bit from some of the other guys in the industry and in the space. And how has that sort of benefited you? How has that carved a niche for you? I suppose, firstly, from an operational perspective, but also, do investors get that story? Do they like it, or has it been a challenge for them?
Yeah, so I think it was a challenge. We were clearly labelled as a chrome miner with some PGM credits on the side, and we went to great lengths to explain the unique approach that we took to the middle group reef horizon. So historically, over many decades, the middle group reef horizon has been mined for chrome concentrates, and then recently there have been some scavenger plants to extract PGMs on the back end. So from the outset, when we looked at the ore body, and it's a multi-seam, fairly complex ore body, we mined 5 middle group seams, MG1, 2, 3, 4, and 4A, and even the UG1 in our resource base. And we looked at it and we said, how do we maximize the value per cube of rock mine? And this talks to our culture of innovation and maximum value and return. And so when we designed the circuitry, we realized that the PGMs associate themselves with the silicates, and it allowed ourselves to take a mass extraction of the chrome concentrates up front, thereby up the feed of PGMs into the rougher circuit. And that really was the nub of how we were able to develop and design this competitive open pit, long life business model. We still have 20 years left in our open pit at Tharisa, and it creates the sustainability that we're all talking about, security of employment, security of investment. We've just completed a R1 billion plant upgrade investment in the Vulcan process, and it's on the back of the success and the profitability that we've all been talking about today. You know, success allows one to grow, and it begets success, as we say. So yes, we are differentiated in that we're mining the middle group reef horizons. It has now been recognized as a source of PGMs. And the beauty of the prill split is that we have a very high rhodium content, around 12% on a 4E basis. So we've really benefited from these buoyant rhodium prices. We have a very good platinum content at about 55% and palladium at around 16%. Very low base metals. So when we look at the constraints in the industry, it's a sweetener in many respects to the PGM refiners in terms of not clogging up the base metal circuits in existence. So yes, the differentiator for us is that we look at resources and opportunities differently. We don't have the balance sheet to compete head-to-head with the majors, but we do believe we have some innovative approaches and thinking that allow us to compete in a significant manner. And with that investment in the Vulcan plant, it will see us producing around 2 million tons of chrome concentrate. You know, the single largest producer from a single mine globally. So a significant milestone in terms of extracting that value. The added benefit, you know, with the conversation around ESG, is that our carbon footprint per ton of product reduces by being more efficient. So when we look at the efficiency of our circuits and our processes, we look at what we throw on the tailings dump. So we analyze how many PGMs we throw away and how many ounces or tons, percent of chrome we put on the tailings storage facility. And that is the metric we use to determine how efficient our processes are. And it's pretty unheard of that we're depositing single-digit chrome percentages on our tailings dams, and you know, we're striving to go below 0.2 grams per ton of PGMs. Now, if we can take that philosophy that we have at the Tharisa mine and deploy it in Zim at a high-grade deposit, I think we can expect wonderful results from that ore body, which is a high-grade, very rich base metal content resource.
So you've spoken about Vulcan a couple of times. You've sort of mentioned it coincidentally. This is your own R&D effort, right? Do you just want to, for the audience that hasn't been following Tharisa closely, do you just want to tell us a little bit more about that process, what made you embark on it, why you built it, and what it's delivering?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a very strong R&D focus and as I said, looking at maximizing recovery. And we realized a number of years ago that the industry was not able to recover the ultrafine chrome. So post your milling circuits, we're milling, you know, below minus 75 micron. Very difficult to recover those ultrafine chrome particles. So we embarked on various campaigns to look at processes and technologies that would allow us to recover that chrome content that we were putting on the waste dumps. And we're very pleased that we ran a commercial scale demo plant for more than a year, proving the viability of the circuit that we designed, developed and innovated, and made the investment decision, as I said, R1 billion, just short of R1 billion, in putting and constructing this Vulcan plant, which is now commissioned and operating in circuit from the live tailings from our two existing integrated PGM and chrome plants. So it's the first of its kind in the industry, in-house designed, developed, and it's really pleasing to see us commercializing the work that we invested in the R&D team successfully deployed. So we have a multitude of other opportunities that we're working on in the downstream space, in PGM beneficiation, in chrome beneficiation, in various forms and shapes. So it really is, again, I think, talking to our core value of innovation.
So, I mean, Fivos, you're not in the room with us, and I'm not sure if you can only see me and Bernard on your screen. But I've seen Natascha nodding intensely, so I think from, from a metallurgist by trade, certainly seems like an interesting development that you guys have managed to pioneer. And I think for me, one of the interesting other loops that closes, and as this conversation progresses, I think the audience can also sort of start seeing some themes coming out of this, right? So it's that theme of extracting maximum value out of the available ore body and really sort of challenging yourself to develop the technology that enables you to pull every last cent out. But does that also then give you a cleaner product that goes onto the tailings dam? Is there also an ESG element to that? Because, I think the popular world became aware of chrome with the movie Erin Brockovich, and suddenly everybody could pronounce hexavalent in front of chrome. So is that also something that helps you to be more environmentally sustainable, making sure that you've got cleaner tailings?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts with, extracting more volume out of every cube. So you're depositing less on your tailing storage facility, so a lesser footprint in that respect, and ultimately extracting that value for stakeholders in general, and that's the broad spectrum of that grouping. Secondly, when we look at the carbon intensity or the footprint per ton of chrome concentrate produced, it reduces, because now you've gone through let's call it the dirtiest part of the process of blasting, drilling, blasting, mining and hauling that cube of run of mine. And now everything you do beyond that point reduces that amount of carbon expended per unit of production. So it has a multiplier effect, we believe, and it is the responsible thing to do. And it's been from the outset our philosophy to maximize that recovery. And the added benefit, obviously, is the reduced carbon footprint per ton produced and ounce produced.
Yeah. So, Fivos, we didn't discuss this beforehand, but, we've also got Jaco and Leanne from Sylvania in the audience, and a couple of other people who are in that kind of game. I know Anglo at Kumba also developed the UHDMS technology, which they're using to extract value out of ultrafines. How do you see this technology getting, I don't want to use the word shared, but how do you see this technology being something that ultimately the entire industry can avail itself of, and that is not necessarily uniquely the technology of the company that developed it for their own benefit? Have you given any thought to models for actually spreading the use of the technology?
Yeah, we have indeed, and we've had some early conversations with some of our peers around the potential application of the technology, either at existing tailings facilities, existing processing plants, because it's in addition to existing processing technology. So yes, there are various models and various scenarios that would enable us to deploy this technology, bearing in mind that each feedstock is different, so there would need to be some customization and some tailoring, but the principle remains the same. You're extracting that ultrafine product. So yes, certainly there is application in the broader industry, and more than likely we'll see the technology being deployed in the future outside of the Tharisa scope.
Okay. And you then also have the privilege of your operations with them all being open pit, with them all being new. You actually have the technology where almost everybody working for you is working, if not in an office-like environment, in a near office-like environment. You don't have people necessarily going underground. Does that enable you then fundamentally to keep all of your employees safer? And does that enable you to draw newer, younger workers who are excited at being able to play with the technology that you guys are leveraging? Can you see that differentiation coming through in your workforce and in the people who want to work for you and with you?
Absolutely. And I think, we're a product of the new mining charter. Being a greenfield startup, let's call ourselves, we're able to, create the environment whereby we can attract skills, we can provide a safe environment for our employees, and safety is our core value. And we do, punt the core value in everything we do. It's entrenched in every action, in every move, and that entails the gender-based violence issue that you've raised. And we'd be foolish not to admit that it is an issue and it is a broader issue, but it's our responsibility to make sure that our employees are at the very least safe while they're in the work environment. And a very good story is the COVID-19 lockdown, whereby we were able to continue operations on a partial basis by virtue of the fact that we have inherent social distancing in our operations. You have a single operator of a dump truck, of an excavator, so they're not exposed to other people or groupings of people. So it allowed us also to rethink our working schedule, and we put in this 4x4 shift cycle, where at any given point in time, no more than 25 to 30% of our labor force are on site, working together. So while we employ, including full-time contractors, around 3,000 people, we never have more than 30% of those people on site at any given point in time. So we minimize the number of people on site and create that sustainability and that secure work environment. So when we come to technology, we run so many various systems, and we're looking at the IoT, the information of things, as an enabling tool for us to track, trace, monitor the efficiency, in particular of our mining fleet, to understand, the pain points, the efficiency points, and we're looking at technology, decarbonization technology. We've just deployed diesel electric trucks on a trial basis, and pleased to report that they're looking very efficient. And it's an interim step in terms of our carbon emission strategy, which is to reduce our footprint by 30%. Most of that will come from our 40 megawatt solar plant. But, a reduction of 20% diesel per cube is significant. And that's what we're looking at with these existing technologies, not cutting edge hydrogen fuel cell, which I think will come in time. And we're very happy to reinvest in that circular economy and in the technology to get us to that carbon net neutral position by 2050.
Fantastic. Bernard is making eyes at me in a bad way. Because the audience is ready. They've got questions.
I was wondering if I'm going to have to interrupt Fivos or you, but I had to bring you two to an end here. This Fivos, I was sort of hoping you would be in person. Is it COVID that kept you from joining us? I just want to hear, are you okay?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes, I'm fine. Unfortunately, I'm isolating at the moment. Yeah.
No, you don't look particularly sick, but we really appreciate the fact that you step up and still do this.
I didn't ask to be polite.
No, but don't be polite. I want to know, is the guy okay? He looks okay, but I mean, can you imagine having COVID and still participating at the abuse that is about to follow now? Now I was really looking forward to observe. Alex Membere, the legend of the PGM industry of Zimbabwe, is sitting in the front row. I wanted to see if you two interact, if you, go and ask some advice, if you offer to talk about synergies. Are you in conversation with the rest of the PGM industry in Zimbabwe, Fivos?
So to be frank, with COVID, we kind of stuck to our own devices, and we put our heads down in terms of completing the implementation study and the resource work that was required to get us to that investment decision. But we are open to synergies, and we believe there are a multitude of opportunities and synergies on the Great Dyke. And I mean, obviously, the big question is downstream beneficiation, and are there opportunities to collaborate and work together? So yes, certainly we would, as we become more active, and start developing, we would be opening up that conversation.
So help me with the pronunciation, Karo, and give us the vital statistics. How much, by when, how much capital, I'm sure you've done this through your results in different places, but just as 300 people of the PGM industry, give us the vital statistics. What are you promising us there?
Sure. So what we're promising is a producing PGM mine within 24 months with a capital intensity of capex amount of $250 million, peak financing of around $310 million. That includes some working capital, run-of-mine stocks. And what is the output going to be? It's 175 kiloton per month processing plant, concentrator, MF2 processing circuit, so rough milling and finer milling with flotation associated with that. And the output at around an 82% PGM recovery is just approximately 150,000 PGM ounces with the associated base metals of nickel and copper. So those are the vital statistics. As other producers on the Great Dyke, we foresee ourselves to be on the low end of the cost curve, below $1,000 per 4E PGM ounce, and that's what we've modeled at the moment. Using spot prices for March, it kicks out an NPV of $770 million for the project, with IRRs of 47% and return on invested capital of the same order, 47%. So by all accounts, an exceptionally attractive and viable project.
And clearly much better than that gaaitjie that Anglo is doing with Mogalakwena. Mogalakwena is the local language for gaaitjie, né? I mean, the big hole. I want to move on. So on Monday, when I had the privilege to drive in Zimbabwe, the geologist with me, when we saw a sign saying Selene Chrome, said this is where this new Karo PGM mine is going to be. Is all the family relationships going to withstand the scrutiny of time? I mean, money moves from here to there, and there's historical relationships, and the family and the other shareholders are in different places. Just unpack that. Is there any shareholder stuff that in time is going to take explanation, or is it all very simple if we pay attention? So help us with the structure.
It's aligned. So first of all, I think we need to clearly state that we're fully aligned as the family and as the founder, shareholder, and backer of Tharisa and the developer of mining assets.
And everybody makes money at the same place. Sorry, Fivos. And everybody makes money at the same place. Please proceed.
Correct. And if you look at the transaction that was just done now, which is a related party transaction, it was done at a significant discount. So the issues around a related party are real, and we take it to board, and that's why we have an independent, the new business committee. We scrutinize it beyond, the normal course due to the issues surrounding historic transactions and historic related party issues globally. So I think we have no doubt that what we're doing is in the best interests for the broader stakeholder group. The Selene Chrome that you drove past is a wholly owned subsidiary, and is our first active operation in Zimbabwe. And we took that on board to basically debottleneck potential issues with operating in a new territory, in a new jurisdiction. I think it's important to note that we've also declared a special economic zone in Zimbabwe, which allows us to benefit from a number of incentives. And the Karo project and Selene both benefit from that. And also any supplier or supply group or business that sets up within that special economic zone. So really the intention there is to create an economic hub.
Fivos, I need to bring it to an end because, we've got Neal Froneman waiting, and he's damn impatient at best. So, I do apologize. What an absolute privilege to welcome you to this conversation. You've certainly earned the right. You've re-established, or you've established a business model which isn't common, and we are all watching with interest your growth trajectory. And I really, despite all the sarcasm around me, I think anybody who's currently isolating because of COVID and steps up to participate, my personal gratitude for that as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fivos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sandra, let's find this Froneman guy and be nice to him. He's a friend. So just, I don't know. Just
Bernard, the only person here who's not nice.
Sandy. Sandy. That's why we invite Sandy to be rude to everybody. Can we see Neal Froneman if he's online, and can we have him on all the time, please? The audience, as I say, want to see Neal, not certainly not me, perhaps Sandra, but definitely not me.
Hi, Neal. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And I think you and I have the unenviable privilege at this point in time of standing between the audience and lunch. But no doubt we've got lots of interesting and exciting things to speak about. And again, I think for the benefit of the audience, there are a whole bunch of themes that have been coming out in the conversation this morning. And I think you and I have the opportunity to sort of wrap up for everybody and pull all of those themes together. And I think a great starting point is we've heard a lot about the role that PGMs we think is going to play in the world going forward, is going to play in the hydrogen economy, the role that PGMs play in other industries like the medical industry and the food industry. But you guys have also come out strongly to say you want to add to that battery minerals. And you're going to be quite bold in that process. So I think maybe a first kind of a theme for us to round up on in that context is how you see that path going, that trajectory that has driven you to take your specific portfolio approach to the commodities that you want to be mining.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra, and good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by saying the fundamentals for PGMs are extremely good. So our decisions related to moving into the battery metal space are not because of a concern around the fundamentals regarding PGMs, but it's a value-based decision. We can see the opportunity to create value like we did it with our entry into PGMs. I think that was actually identified when we were really, let's say, studying the demand characteristics for the PGMs. We identified that battery electric vehicles were going to make significant inroads or penetration into the global car pool. And we recognized that back in 2017 already. And we made our first move in 2019 when we acquired SFA Oxford, and Steve, who presented this morning, was part of helping us develop our battery metal strategy. I think it was also a recognition that ESG would become a very important differentiator, and that a combination of PGMs and battery metals would really provide us with a very balanced and profitable production base. But probably more importantly, a class-leading environmental profile or credential. And when you combine PGMs, battery metals, with our leading status as a global PGM recycler as well, you combine that with our investments in tailings retreatment, when you combine that with our very significant uranium resources, you have a unique combination of green credentials that is second to none in the mining sector. And that was really the, let's say, the value proposition that you have now seen unfolding over the last few years. Let me just finish by saying that the arrival of COVID has accelerated all these trends that I've referred to, and actually has provided us with a catalyst to launch the formal green metal strategy which we did at the beginning of 2021. So that really was the drivers of the decision to move into other metals similar to PGMs.
Thanks. And I think that takes us to the next point, which is, again, a theme that we're increasingly hearing about. You know, I think I didn't start in the mining and metals industry all the way back when Bernard started in the industry. But tailings retreatment originally wasn't that much of a thing, you know, and there were a couple of companies that were doing tailings retreatment. But it seems to be a component of the mining industry as a whole that's picking up and drawing attention, not only for, I suppose, the relative low cost of your feedstock, as it were, but also something that's picking up in terms of ESG, in terms of environmental sustainability, in terms of value maximization. And again, Sibanye's made a few interesting investments in that space. And so is that, as you say, is it a circular economy ESG driver? Is there a broader kind of, if you can't beat them, join them behind that? And does that extend into broader recycling, so not just tailings retreatment?
Yes, so I think it's important to say that most people see tailings retreatment as cleaning up old tailings, which of course, yes, is important from an environmental point of view. But I think, Sandra, the use of the word circular economy is the very important part of your question. So. From our point of view, yes, the link into the circular economy is important, and it's very much another key aspect of our broader green metal strategy, as I alluded to in the previous question, and it's a significant differentiator relative to our gold and PGM peers. I think you've referred to the commercial benefits, but there's something much more important, and you've also referred to that as well. It's very clear to us that the circular economy is not only a nice to have, but will be an absolute imperative for sustainability. Recycling and tailings retreatment are also significantly more efficient and less resource intensive than primary mining. For instance, our US PGM recycling business emits 6 times less tons of CO2, utilizes 63 times less water, and generates 90 times less waste than an average underground mine. So those are very, very important aspects that start differentiating you as a business. I want to go further and say that in addition, it's not long now, and all metals will be tracked not only from a provenance perspective, but also to determine the carbon footprint associated with those metals. The large exposure that we have to tailings retreatment and recycling's low carbon footprint will clearly be one of our competitive advantages. And in fact, we are looking into leading the implementation of tracking all metals in this space that I've referred to. And we've actually identified technology that we're considering investing in through our Barney Cube initiative. There are significant environmental benefits with green credentials, and they provide or potentially provide access to premium customer pricing. And we are seeing that with our battery metal positions in Finland, France, and even the US. So there are commercial benefits to having a lower carbon footprint as well. I mean, we have experienced that in PGMs as well. We do receive premiums for our Stillwater Platinum because it's considered the greenest platinum in the world. So those precedents are absolutely there. So from a company point of view, metals from recycling and tailings retreatment are considered even greener, and therefore today I'm proud to say that we produce some of the greenest platinum, greenest palladium, greenest rhodium, and from tailings retreatment also some of the greenest gold, and believe it or not, zinc.
It's fascinating. As you're speaking, I'm getting this sort of parallel vision. You know, when people talk about hydrogen, the guys who really know about hydrogen, they'll talk about grey hydrogen and blue hydrogen and green hydrogen and all those different sort of differentiators within the hydrogen spectrum. And I'm almost getting this sense that, you know, similar to the Kimberley process and the role that it played in being able to give people assurance around conflict-free diamonds, that is a trend that we're beginning to see in the industry, and it's going to be interesting to see if that carries through in terms of, and you're saying to us that it does, the origin and what goes into the production of a metal that I think otherwise we all grew up with as something that's fairly commoditized. And so on that note, you've told us, you've mentioned Barney Cube. We've heard Fivos talk about, you know, some of the R&D money that they've spent, the plant that they've developed and that they've put up. You're doing something slightly different. You've committed 1.5% of EBITDA, and you've said to me that's about $50 million a year, into corporate venture capital. What is that intended to do? Where do you want to go with that? And how do you see that, you know, sort of giving you a further differentiation from your peers?
Yeah, and the concept's not unique, but our Barney Cube is an incubator fund, which we intend to foster research and market development of new innovation and technologies for our metals. And it's really driven by investing and leveraging both upstream and downstream strategic partnerships. Now, as a business, you can create your own capacity to do research and development, or you can partner with startups, and that's what we've done. We have many things that come across our desk, but this will support our company on its path to becoming a climate change resilient business and a leading supplier of green metals and energy solutions. I think that energy solutions is a natural evolution of a metals company like ourselves. So as new entrants into the PGM and battery metal sectors, we've looked beyond the traditionally accepted, let's call it market development avenues, to things that to market development that we believe is more impactful. And one of those more recently was the tri-metal catalyst, allowing the partial substitution of palladium with platinum in gasoline autocats. And that was successfully launched, and I have no doubt will have a very significant impact on platinum demand and deal with the deficits that we've seen in palladium. And as I referred to, our business development team spend most of their time looking at gold, PGM, green metal type transactions, but many opportunities come across their desk, and obviously potential partnerships with an out of the box type thinking, and that's where the Barney Cube, the cube comes from. It's out of the box thinking, and those perspectives provide us with very new market development angles, which of course will obviously ensure a home for our metals. You've already mentioned that it's a significant commitment, 1.5% of EBITDA, and it's a very clear decision to partner with some of these very interesting startups, and why we have done it as let's say distinctly as we've done it is also to create a proper corporate governance environment for making some of these investment decisions. So I have no doubt it'll be part of us achieving our strategic intent.
And again, Neal, just to tie that back, Steve made the point in the opening presentation this morning, I think in his postcard to Bernard, to talk about the need for a coordinated industry intervention to create a sustainable demand for PGMs. And what I'm hearing from you with your bionic cube is that you believe that that is an efficient way for you to do that. And I wonder also if it's not a little bit speaking to something that Natascha mentioned, which is to say that young people are going to push us to go even faster in terms of the rate of change and the rate of innovation in the industry. And do you see that kind of corporate venture capital model, kind of hanging out the flag and say, hey, we're open to new ideas as a key accelerator for you in terms of responding to change and actually being challenged to change your technology and your markets faster?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the grey elephants I referred to with our year-end results was a grey elephant related to people, artificial intelligence, the fifth industrial revolution. They all interlinked, and one of our key strategic differentiators that we are focusing on is becoming more bionic. And let me point out, the reason that I'm not at the PGM day in person is because we are a digital first organization, and we believe in being present virtually. And that's just part of becoming bionic. It's part of not contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. It's part of becoming more effective. So absolutely, it's becoming bionic and attracting younger people with different ideas in a workforce that is aging and a population that's aging is very important.
Mm. I mean, when you're talking about coming bionic, Neal, I just want to check it is you. It's not an avatar. It's not an AI simulation. No, it's close to lunchtime, so we tend to get a little bit jokey. Bernard wants to take the mic from me, so before I let him take the mic away, you are actually, Neal, the champion for women in mining at the Minerals Council, and you also lead the social advisory group at the ICMM. So Bernard's going to indulge me, and the audience will hopefully indulge me for one last time, just to get your views on an industry-wide basis, because you span a whole bunch of commodities, you span a whole group of different operating environments, and I think you have the privilege of sort of being part of that, international conversation around these issues of women and how we invite them into the workplace and we keep them safe. So maybe just as my closing question to you and my closing question for the day, how do you see the subject, and how do you think we can challenge ourselves to do better on this front?
Yeah, and certainly everything that's been said today on this topic, I agree with totally. There's absolutely nothing that was said that I could not support. But I think first point is it's a societal issue. It's not just a mining industry issue. And unfortunately, the very courageous Rio report almost created the perception that it's only a mining industry problem. It's not. And I'll quote some examples shortly. I think many other industries have shown exactly the same type of issues. Hollywood, the Me Too movement, and clearly that's part of the solution, is getting these issues out into the open and avoiding victims experiencing stigmatization. That's a very, very critical step. I think in South Africa, our challenges, and I think it was Nico that raised it, lawlessness and a lack of law enforcement make women particularly vulnerable. So those are things we have to address as well. But saying that, it really is within all of our control. So we as leaders and organizations need to set the example. We need to say it's not just a societal issue. We can make a difference in our company. I've certainly, as you've elaborated on, stepped up to the plate in industry leadership positions. We need to increase the awareness and actively promote gender diversity, equity, and inclusion. And last year, we as a company, we launched an anti-GBV initiative, Take the Pledge, not in my name, like many other companies. We have a leading women in mining group within our company. I've just recently appointed a vice president inclusivity as a very concrete step to make a difference. So, in Sibanye-Stillwater, we've made tangible progress, but we've still got a long way to go. And I think all of us have to just work hard at this.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you, Neal. I want to put to the audience at the end of this 5 times you've asked a question, I want to hear the audience speak on this. So I'm going to paraphrase the question to the audience. The platinum industry, the PGM industry, so we're talking narrowly here, the PGM industry should do more to make the workplace safer for women, yes or no? Okay, that's your question.
I'm watching you guys vote, eh?
The platinum industry should do more to make the workplace safe. Sandra, we've got 200 people online for the 150 people here, so you can't influence the outcome. I tried with Sandy's question, I couldn't. Neal, you and Sandra were all over the place. You never spoke about the issues. So, I mean, really, I'm disappointed in the both of you. Eh? I mean, listen. So, are you still striking in the gold industry? And what does that say about the platinum industry wage negotiations? We haven't really touched a lot on cost pressure. Just from where you sit now, do you expect the platinum industry to have difficult wage negotiations? And how does this play out from a cost structure point of view? And obviously, if I'm not mistaken, your gold mines are currently striking. Is that still true? Neal?
Yeah. So Bernard, I think there's lots of confusion in organized labor about profitability of businesses and relative increases. Our striking gold, again, is not about gold wages. It's really about setting the scene for what perhaps will take place in PGMs. We will not tolerate an increase that is much above inflation. The industry as a whole has made major catch-ups over the last few decades of wages, and in our view, the wage profile is fair. So if you want to create a cost squeeze, and then certainly agree to above inflation wage increases, there are many other ways to share value, and I have no problem sharing value. In fact, the tree behind me is the Sibanye-Stillwater Umdoni tree, which is about shared value and stakeholder capitalism. You don't do it in ratcheting up your fixed costs. There's a real likelihood that the world is going into an economic recession in the next short while, and we can't let buoyant commodity prices confuse us in terms of wages and salary. So we will take a firm line, whether it's with wages or whether it's with Eskom increases. We need to be very robust, and probably as a country, nip this above inflation increases in the bud. So that's really our view. It's unfortunate that many other people become the meat in the sandwich for the wrong reasons.
So perhaps at the Joburg and Durban we can have an award for the person who brought NUM and AMCU together. Sorry, I see Neal is still speaking.
There's
Neal,
a delay.
sorry.
There's a delay between the video
They show
and
us, my apologies, they did what they showed us you speaking from earlier, but we did hear the audio correctly. So I was saying we'll perhaps contemplate an award for somebody who brought AMCO and NUM together on an issue. So I'm not sure whether that's congratulations or sorry, dude. There's a question from somebody who I've never met before. I think it's Natascha Viljoen. You may have heard of her. She asked, how do you think industry collaboration plays a role in market and product development, and what should we learn from the history of that collaboration? It sounds like a loaded question, but hey, it's not me to put words in somebody else's mouths normally. Neal?
Yeah. So Natascha, I think the market development initiatives that tend to exist today in terms of associations were developed in the 80s, and they really do not, in my mind, take cognizance of today's issues, and that's the reason we're not part of them. We don't disagree with market development at all. I just think that the world has moved on, they served their purpose, and and we can make more meaningful differences. I don't think we should duplicate efforts. I think your venture fund is a great initiative, and I think we are just looking at doing different things. And of course, we're quite willing to share our knowledge and so on. I just think we have a different view of the world compared to what it was in the 80s. And remember, one of my very important directors in this regard was Barry Davison, who was fundamental in seeing jewelry and so on. But those things have changed. I think we can talk more, but we just see ourselves as doing complementary things.
Now, part of the objectives of the Joburg and Durban conversation overall is to get conversations going and to not always hear that there are conversations in the background. So Natascha and Neal, really appreciating the fact that we lift these conversations up to public fora like this. We could not script it better. So now I have to say something nice about Sandra. I'm going to look for inspiration. But whilst we are thinking about something nice to say about our lead sponsor and their representative, is our audience voted 93% yes. So I think there's a clear perception that a lot more can and should be done in order to make our workplaces safer for women. So Sandra, you introduced that as a good thread throughout. I was very keen for us to make this hybrid platform work with this unique 5 CEOs in one conversation. And then we agreed there's only one person who can pull it off, and that was you. And I think you've done exactly that. Thank you for the money, but you know what? Other people also can pay me. But I don't think anybody else could actually have held this conversation together. All participants, and especially Sandra, that was one of the best I've ever had the privilege of listening into. Thank you very much, everybody. Lunchtime.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.